Galatians 5:15-24 says, "If you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. So I say, live by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit."
Happy birthday, Abby and Emma. This is birthday week for us. We have Becca's birthday, then 5 days later Emma's, then 4 days later Abby. So right now we're right between Emma and Abby's birthdays. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to share with moms this week something that we do on birthdays that it really builds up you as an individual, but it also helps to build the bond between siblings. And this past week on my private Facebook group that's called Intentional Mom Strong Family, we've had a lot of discussion about sibling relationships, how moms can improve them. And I just wanted to ask you girls, do you girls ever argue?
Yes.
What kind of things do you guys argue about?
What music is turned on?
Actually, that's kind of funny because your brothers went to school and now it's just you girls and Dad and I. And so Dad's been saying that now that the guys are gone, that it's just a constant musical around here. You girls are always singing songs together. Like you've watched The Sound of Music lately, I think 10 times in the last 3 weeks or something.
Hashtag musical marathon.
Yeah, so you guys like to watch musicals, but then you like to sing them every moment that you're home at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's
She's
it's
not
funny.
kidding about that.
No, I'm
No,
not.
she is not.
Yeah, it's literally just about every waking moment, I think.
And if you know me, I sing more at home than I sing out places, which is a feat.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do you guys argue about?
Oh, we argue about the dogs and the dishes and the chores and our interactions with each other and...
So how do you resolve those disagreements?
Well, we just let it go for the moment, even though we might be still a little bit angry or mad, and then we just walk away from the discussion for a little bit, and then we come back like a little bit later, and then
Usually by that point, either we've like gotten over it and forgotten about it and just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Or we're cooled off enough that it's a pretty civil, short conversation.
Yeah, and we understand that we both had some faults in it usually.
Do you guys think that it's a big deal to come back and repair?
Yes.
I think so. I think it's important to know that apologizing is not the end of the world.
Yes. Yeah, that, but also treasuring the relationship enough to not think that we can have a spat and then that's just the end of it. And we're not going to come back and resolve and repair this relationship. Because sweeping it under the rug or just ignoring that all of that happened does not build a good long-term relationship. And it's worth investing in that.
And I think I really care about my responsibility as a mentor and leader to my younger family members. So I pray often for my nephews and my little sister because I have a mentor role in all of their lives. And I know that I won't do a good job unless God helps me. So I think praying about the relationship it makes you want to be intentional about the relationship.
And wouldn't you say the fact that your older siblings have done that with you, it's inspired you to be that kind of an older sister too?
Oh, definitely. My older siblings are like, often in situations, I'm like, how would Becca handle this? How would Tori do this?
Yeah. So truly getting it started in the right direction with the olders is going to trickle down, whether it's positive habits or negative habits All of that is going to trickle down to the youngers and impact it. So what about, I know I heard Emma say this the other day, that something happens, like if you guys have a spat, what happens at bedtime?
Well, a lot of the time it's like right before bed. So we have an argument and then we go into our rooms, like get ready for bed, and then when we're both in bed, usually Abby comes into my room and she apologizes and then I apologize. And then she's like, I don't want to go to bed angry at each other, or like I don't want this to be not really permanent, but like I don't want this to continue.
Yeah. A wedge.
Yeah.
Don't want a wedge to be there.
Yeah.
Now, girls, so for sure we have spats then in the Harrison house.
Yeah.
What would you say, though, are some rules in the spatting? Like, we would never call each other names. That would never happen.
One. We're never, well, none of us have ever done that, really. Call each other names, not allowed to, like, stick our tongues out at each other or, like,
yeah,
mean
actions, or even, we're not going to say shut up or disrespectful terms like that. Instead, we express that we disagree and express that we're frustrated about it, but we certainly uphold a degree of respect.
And I know I've heard you say before that if one of you wins, neither of you wins, quote unquote wins, because if you're arguing and one of you sees yourself as a victor and the other one is like, well, I just lost that argument, then that is going to hurt your relationship. And so neither of you guys are winning in that situation.
Yes. If there's a winner and a loser in the argument, then the relationship lost. And that's a principle from my second book in Clash in Your Home. I brought up Clash in Your Home last week on the podcast when I was talking. I read a little section there about at the death of a family friend. And then that's in chapter 1. In chapter 2, I do talk about that we are a team. We are always a team. And part of our role in life is to be a blessing to one another. That doesn't mean that every second we're all sweet and oogly.
I don't think we're ever oogly.
Okay. All kinds of fun words being made up today. But it does mean that we have drawn some lines in the sand about how we're going to treat one another. Okay, so let's transition this a little bit to birthdays. Until you're 18, we go around on your birthday. So we'll have a birthday meal and the person picks what we're going to serve at that meal. And then while we have dessert, everybody goes around and says something that they appreciate about the birthday person, something that they see, a quality that they see in them, a way that that person impacts the world around them or has impacted them individually. So girls, let's help out our listeners today. Since, we don't live by all of the kids anymore. Y'all grew up in Kansas and then we moved away. And so the ones that were grown, we have 3 married kids that still live in Kansas. And then we have 2 in college, and then we have you 2 that are still at home. So for your birthdays, we went back there this weekend and we had a birthday meal for both of you at the same time. So I was thinking, Emma, can you share with the listeners, what are some of the things that people said about Abby? And Abby, you share some of the things that people said about Emma to kind of give an idea of how this looks and how it works. So Emma, tell us, what did some of your siblings and grandparents or Dad and I say about Abby?
So some of the things that they said was she's always welcoming to people. She, like, even if she is the new person, she always wants to make everybody feel welcome. And she's always kind and funny and sweet, and she's always singing, and she has a great voice. And the fact that she's singing all the time means that she's happy because singing makes her happy. And so if she's happy all the time, then she's singing. And if she's singing all the time, then she's happy. So, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mentioned that Abby's really got a gift for if I'm struggling with something, whether it's just perspective on a situation or whether it's trying to make a decision about a situation. Really, God seems to have gifted you, Abby, with an ability to identify scripture that applies to the moment. And that's really, I mean, there are so many times where you are almost mentoring me in those moments. And I should say, in a spot like this, it's not ever the kids' role. They should not have to be weighed down with the heaviness of all the stuff that we carry as parents. But at the same time, sharing some of our decision-making struggles and things we're praying about or struggling with, that I should have this attitude and I have this attitude, sharing that with our kids and allowing them, they have a lot more wisdom to give than you might think, especially if you have them regularly in the Word of God. So that's one of your gifts, Abby.
I have one more thing to share,
Okay,
actually.
okay.
I said this about you, Abby, that you are always looking for ways to bless people, and you're always trying to make them feel happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's sweet, guys.
Okay, so Abby, what were some things that people said about Emma?
Well, they said that she was fun, creative, ambitious, playful, kind, and thoughtful. I know that when I was saying about Emma, well, we usually give examples. I mean, not always, but a lot of
we
people...
wouldn't just say that they're kind and then move to the next person. We usually have an example of that.
Yeah, so like how she collects old paper towel, the cardboard from paper towel rolls, or just old boxes that we have laying around.
It's a great gift you have, Emma.
Well, she creates these things that are like I never would have thought of.
Yeah.
But she's just so creative.
Yeah. There's an Emma creative closet, but a place where she puts, if she thinks that she can build something out of that at some point, it goes in that closet, and then pretty
It's
soon you go in her room one day and she's invented this one thing, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool.
She made shoes out of a cardboard box of like the popcorn
macaroni.
Oh, macaroni boxes.
What else have you made, Emma?
Well, we used to have, well, we still do, but it's kind of beat up now. This little basketball hoop that you just like hang it up on a door. And so I made this cardboard thing like you see on basketball hoops and stuff, like real ones. It's this little thing that it's curved towards you and it makes the ball come back to you, but it was too bent in the middle, so it just hung up there. The ball. So it just hung up there.
Yeah, one way you and I clash is that I like things to be all neat and orderly, and you like to have your creative stuff all around. So that's one of our ways that we clash. But I'm really glad that God made you creative, and I know He's got a lot of ways that He'll use that in your future, I'm sure. But really already, because like with every birthday that rolls around, you're always coming up with the most creative ways to bless them on their birthday and things to make for them and stuff. That is pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
That's
you've
good.
done scavenger hunts and bracelets.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and your cards are always like really cool, like lift the flap stuff or
pop-ups.
Yeah, pop-ups and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah. So that is how we do birthdays. One little tradition that we have with birthdays, so that we can help bond one another. But it also plays into us being in the habit of verbally blessing one another and learning to. Something I talk to you moms about a lot is visionary parenting, or speaking truth into our kids about themselves that they don't see in themselves. Happy birthday, girls, and thank you for joining me. So for the listeners, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A before we wrap it up today. Thanks, girls.
Bye.
So speaking of visionary parenting, I had the great privilege of going to a mom's event a couple of weekends ago. It was so good. It was my first time to be able to speak at something since COVID started. It was really kind of sad. I had the biggest lineup of speaking events that I had ever on the roster for 2020. And then COVID hit, and of course, everything canceled. And so this was so special to get to do that again. I've really missed it. And this was a smaller group, 20 women. So social distancing was super easy to do. So it just was very feasible in our current society and situation to be able to do that. And what a great blessing it was to spend time with moms. So thanks for inviting me. What a great group of women. So they had some questions, and I wanted to do Q&A with you guys today on the air with those questions. So the first one was, you were telling us about how the words we choose to use to describe our kids is really important, and that what they believe about themselves has a big impact on what choices they make and how they see themselves. Now that makes sense to me. And I wasn't careful about that while my daughter was younger. I didn't know. But I've been listening to you for a while, so I've been trying to do that. The problem is, she's a teenager, and she doesn't like it when I say nice things about her. She tells me to stop and that it's not true. You talked about the importance of being a visionary parent, speaking truth into them because they don't believe in themselves right now. But I have a teenager who hates me to do that. So what am I supposed to do? That's a great question. I've definitely experienced that with my own teens as well. Sometimes our teenagers act like they don't want us to do something that they actually really do want us to do. I know that I was like that as a teenager. I wanted to act like I didn't want to see and experience love from my parents, but I really did want to. So we need to keep doing it, even if our teenagers are not giving us any positive response from it. Keep doing it. Keep pouring the truth into them. But secondly, what you want to do is help them to learn to identify the lies that are in their own heads, because that's often the case when they don't want to hear good from you, is because they're not believing good about themselves. And there's this exercise that I do, and I've actually talked to you guys about it before, and I'll put in the show notes what episode number it is. It's actually our most popular episode that has ever aired. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes. But I've still got Abby and Emma here because this is an important habit that you want your kids to be in, is identifying the lies that are in their head. So we were just on our way home from somewhere the other day. So I was just like, girls, get out your notebooks, write down everything that comes in your mind that is a negative thought that you think about yourself in your head. I gave them 5 minutes, and I told them, you have to come up with a minimum of 5 things. Then I had them star the most destructive one. And then that destructive one, I had them come up with a positive statement, opposite statement, and a Bible verse to connect with it. Would you girls be willing to share your positive statement and verse? Now, I will say too, it's really important when you teach your kids this method that you tell them nobody's going to look at their paper. I did not look at my girls' papers. I do not know what was on my girls' papers. The point is not of this exercise is truly teaching them the habit of being more aware about what lies are in their head, what they are repeating to themselves, and to overcome it. So I had them write a positive statement and a verse to go along with it, had them write it out on note cards when they got home, and to say it out loud to themselves at least 3 times a day. And so they have been so gracious to be willing to share these with you guys. That's a vulnerable thing to do. I mean, all of us, the enemy tempts us to believe bad things about ourselves because he wants us to be defeated and immobilized and discouraged, hopeless, all of these things. So learning to identify them and then learning how to overcome them. The Bible says, take every thought captive. And this is an exercise for doing that. And girls, it's very brave of you to share this with the audience. And I didn't make either of you do this, but you were both willing because it might help maybe a girl your age, any kid your age, or a mom, because you mentioned them to me ahead of time. And they're both something that even a mom would struggle with, either one of these thoughts, as do I sometimes. Emma, what is the positive statement that you're working on right now and Bible verse to go with it?
It is, I believe, and the verse, it's in Romans. I can't remember what passage, but it says that if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, then you will be saved. And I actually have another verse. You have been saved through faith, and it is not your own doing, for it is the gift of God.
Yeah, that's a struggle everyone has from time to time. The enemy likes to tell us, you don't belong to God. He doesn't care about you, or you don't know for sure that you're going to heaven. He loves to put doubt in our mind. And so those are great verses to use for that, Emma. Thank you for being vulnerable and brave to share that with us. Abby, what's yours?
My positive statement is I am good enough. My verse is Romans 8:4. It says, in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit.
Thank you for sharing that. So what we do with that, we take that positive verse statement and we say it at least 3 times a day for however many days we need to until we don't believe that lie anymore. And then it's time to do that exercise again and come up with our new statement that we're going to correct in our minds. So it's identifying the most destructive statement that is a lie that you keep telling yourself in your mind. Thanks, girls, for sharing one more thing in our podcast today. I really appreciate it. Next question, Q&A, is you talked about being consistent with boundaries and rules and not changing them every day, depending on my willingness to enforce the boundaries. What I said at that time was that, let's say maybe you take the kids to the zoo and then you get home and you're exhausted and they're breaking some rules that yesterday you said were a really big deal and this is what the rule is, and now they're breaking it, but you're tired and you don't feel like enforcing it. So that inconsistency, it devalues our words. It makes them not listen to the boundaries we put because they know we're not really going to follow through with them all the time. So now what she was saying was she has a hard time being consistent with those because she feels like she is inconsistent herself. Like, for example, she said she doesn't like to tell them to do their chores because she's not always doing her chores the way she should. And so this is how I described it to her, because this is what I've had to do a lot of times. Saying to my kids, I am still struggling with this issue. Can we stop and pray with me about being more consistent with it? And then we can pray together. And then I can say, it is my responsibility. God made me your mom. And it is my responsibility to raise you up with good habits for life and doing the right thing. So I'm going to give you this boundary even while I'm struggling with it too. Okay. So there was a time, and I've mentioned this probably, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast or not, but I have a blog post about it, that we had a money jar and there was something I was working on, and that was quick to get angry. Okay. So anytime I was quick to get angry, I had to put $1 in the jar. And then there were different things that the kids were working on, and they would put in a penny, a nickel, a dime, a quarter, whatever age they were. It had been preset how much that child had to put in based on how much money they were making in life and how much, that kind of thing. So anyway, it was a way for them to be working on their stuff and you to be working on your stuff. So being honest and acknowledging I fall short. I'm a mom who falls short, and yet it is still my responsibility to make sure I consistently give you boundaries. And that's what I'm going to do right now, child. I'm going to be consistent with this boundary, and I'm going to expect you to follow through with it while your mom is also working on her life and shortcomings. So that is my approach with that. Last question, last Q&A. When you talked about relationship repairing with an older child, I knew I needed to do that. Now she's grown and out of the house. You said I need to tell her ahead of time something like, in 2 weeks, I would so love if we could get together and you tell me anything that is stuck around in your mind through these years that I didn't parent well in the past, anything that might be building resentment in you. I really want to hear you out, and I really want to start repairing our relationship in that area. And the mom's question to me was, I don't know how to be quiet and to just listen in that situation. I'm going to want to defend myself and I'm going to want to get frustrated. So how do I handle it? What do I do? Well, every time that Rich and I have had a talk like that with one of our older kids, it has required us ahead of time saying out loud to each other, Rich and I, our goal is not to explain anything, teach them anything, impact them in a way of us transmitting information to them. That is not today's goal. Today's goal is only to listen, to hear them out, to get a better understanding of where they're at and how they're feeling about past stuff. If we can do that, if we can just, here's what we often want to do. Repair and relationship fixing is uncomfortable. So we want to rush it, right? So we're kind of willing to hear the other person say what we did wrong, but then we want to quickly apologize. Okay, let's put it behind us. Let's get out of this. This is unpleasant. But really, people need to feel like they've been heard. Okay? Let's say, if you're married, your husband does something that offends you. Almost as important as anything else is him being willing to say, I can tell that I have hurt you. I want to make it right. Can you help me better understand how I hurt you and how it made you feel? And I just want to listen. And I just want to understand better, understand your heart better. I'm here to listen. Wouldn't that be impactful to you? And wouldn't that alone begin to soften your heart and the resentment that you have about the situation? And that's what our kids need. They need us to slow the process down. Don't rush into defending ourselves or apology either, but just hear them. Just give them space to be heard and to let us know how what we did made them feel. Now, that doesn't mean that we are necessarily going to say, yes, everything is my fault about the relationship. That's not the point of that interaction. The point of this interaction is just to hear them. And then it's an interesting thing, moms, that if you'll take the time, set aside time for that one specific thing, and then tell them, you know what? I just want to pray about everything you've said and let it soak in and let the Holy Spirit show me things about that. And you know what? God really will do that if you will let him. And what I've found is I could go into a conversation like that with one of my kids and think, I really wasn't wrong in any way in this situation. And they could explain to me their perspective and all that. And I could still think that. But because I was willing to pray about it for a couple of weeks, God would start showing me ways in which actually I was wrong in some ways that I hadn't thought of and that I hadn't been able to see. And that is important. It is important for us to truly repair in relationships and not just go through the motions. And it's important for our kids to be able to see that we listen to God and that we are willing to change and be molded and things. So what I'm not getting into today in this Q&A is all of the aspects of really helping to heal in a relationship. That is part of the 6 questions of your child's heart. That is a whole topic that requires some pretty in-depth look at. They're asking the question, am I worth repairing this relationship over? Are you willing to heal with me? Am I worth healing? And so going through this process is an important one. And this is just one little step. It's really the first step, is just hearing them, giving them space to be heard. Well, this is what I have for you today, moms. I know this was really different from a lot of other episodes. We didn't dig deeply into any one thing, but we hit lots of things lightly. Now, I thought I'd wrap up with something from my book in that same chapter 2, that we are a team. And so I'm just going to read a paragraph to you. You'll see later in this book that I have a family communication evaluation form. I base that form on the Bible passage above that talks about living by the Spirit of God versus living by our own selfish desires. That's the verse that Abby shared at the beginning. Now, my fellow intentional parent, you must stay on the alert against the enemy of your family who wants to make you believe that you're enemies with one another. Teach your kids to identify his play as well. When you sense the enemy's efforts taking root in a family situation where you notice that a conflict is arising, that it is bringing direct hits against one another verbally, or just an attitude of stubbornly demanding one's own way without regard for the rest of the family, it's time to speak up. Call it what it is. At our house, that would sound something like, "Hey guys, I think we're starting to attack one another instead of attacking the issue." This might even be spiritual warfare in the heavenlies, that our enemy is seeking to hurt our family relationships. Let's take a step back from this and remember that we're not each other's enemies. And if we have a winner and a loser in this issue, then we've all lost. We need to find the right answer for the situation, not a right person. So I thought I would share that with you because Abby brought that up earlier in today's podcast. Thank you, moms, for spending time with me each week. I just find it such a privilege to enter your home or your office or your car while you are living life and you're seeking to live a life that is pleasing to the Lord and that builds up your family and your kids. I sure wish I could sit down with a cup of tea across from you today and see how your life is going. I would love it if you'd connect with me on Instagram and we can be pals there. But this week, moms, I'm going to be praying for you. I pray that you will be growing more intentional every day in your efforts to grow a strong family. The family communication evaluation form that I mentioned is my feature this month for free. If you subscribe to this podcast by the end of September 2020, I'm going to send out this free resource to all of my subscribers. So go to practicallyspeakingmom.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and enter your email address. It's that simple. Once you've done that, at the beginning of October, you'll receive the family communication evaluation form to help identify some negative communication patterns in your home that need growth. It will come in my weekly Monday email, so you may need to check your spam folder and tell your email that you do want to receive emails from practicallyspeakingmom.com. Next week, I'll be joined by my husband, Rich, to talk about building and nurturing a sense of security in relationships. I'm looking forward to meeting with you right here next Monday, where together we're building stronger families. Until then, I'm praying for you, Mom.